My name is Daddy Kev. You are at Cosmic Zoo. This is my studio here in Atwater Village, Los Angeles, California. From DJing, I guess. I started DJing in junior high school. Just kind of caught the bug. And never, at that point, didn't think that that's what I was going to do. And it just kind of stuck. I, of course, then got interested in production. How are the records I was playing, I was just really curious how they were made. And therein began my love affair, with production and engineering and how records are made. Studio in Inglewood, I forget the name of it. They had, it was like a 8-track tape, and that was my first time in a real spot, and that totally, blew me away. I felt like I was in a, magical place, and it kept, really furthered my interest of like, okay, what do I got to do to be back in this environment as much as possible? Probably my first production that I was doing. It was late 90s, artist Phoenix Orion. And I had a friend at the time, Hive, who became my roommate, and he had a really nice studio. He had like a Mackie 24, the 8-bus, 2 8-ats, and that was like a big deal for me, like access to that level. At that point, I was just doing Tascam 4-track, and we had a Tascam 8-track, and to finally move to digital and that many tracks and on a bigger board, that's really where I cut my teeth. Late 90s, I was working with a rap artist, Abstract Rude, and that was my first time on SSL. I never forgot what that felt like and what I was able to do, with that console. It was unlike any other console I had been on, and that really stuck with me. And when I was able to get the XLDesk, really, there was almost a 15-year differential between that time and getting the XLDesk. But I tell you, it's been pretty much the best thing to happen in my career, straight up, Yes, my first mentor, he was a gentleman named Scott Wolf. He had done some work with Dr. Dre and Guar, and then went on to become Timbaland's, Leah, in that whole era. And yeah, he taught me so much. He took me from just a very rudimentary understanding of working on a Mackie to like mixed groups and the importance of preamps, which at the time I was just so dismissive of, but I was very young back then. So, because I asked him, I was like, okay, I got some money saved up. What do you think I should buy? He's like, dude, mic pre's for sure. I'm like, dude, mic pre's for real? Like, it's got to be the most boring thing out there. You know what I mean? It's just, at that point, again, I didn't have an understanding yet of what that meant. But he really kind of put me in the right direction. I went to school for philosophy, which I think actually plays a big part in what I do as an engineer. And I try to apply certain ideas, from that to engineering. I became very fascinated with Zen Buddhism and just Buddhism in general. And there's certain aspects to that I try to apply to engineering. When I'm approaching a mix, I feel that everything that I have to do, it's almost like a mathematical proof, and there's going to be a certain order to what I'm doing, EQ-wise, compression-wise, routing-wise. And I think that those instructions, that proof, if you will, I try to think of it that or the way I approach it is that it's not coming from me, really. That all of those instructions are actually in the music. Everything I need to know is coming out of those speakers and the order in which it needs to happen. My challenge is to decipher the instructions and the idea that it has little to do with what I think, that the music has its own opinion and that it has what it wants. And sometimes it's screaming it at me, you know, like, do this, help me here, help me there. But I believe that really when I'm operating at my best, that my head's out of it. I'm an instrument of the music itself to translate on its behalf, and it's not about my opinion. It's about the song's opinion, about what it needs, and that there's some sort of objective truth about what sounds great sound, and that objectivity exists outside of any one person's perception. I think ultimately, when I'm mixing or mastering, you know, we're going for a translation, that it translates in all these environments into all these people's ears. And I don't think you can do that approaching it with a whole lot of ego, you know? I think you have to know that what people think sounds good is what other people think. It's not what you think. Granted, I like to think I have a good ear for it, but I'm not concerned with my ear. I'm concerned with the audience's ear. And that I'm not, you know, I don't think mixing is a time to get creative. I know that sounds weird, but I think it's a creative process. But I'm not trying to manipulate things past where the song thinks it should be. I tell people all the time, you just gotta think about me as like a really heavy hammer, you know, like I'm not gonna have an opinion about, you know, what's good or bad about your music, or what I would change or what I would do different. It's about, that's it, face value, execute. And I try to, it's taken me years to get here, you know, to understand the process more, understand where I fit, and ultimately what I can do to have people come back to me and continue to work with me. And my whole career is based upon that, in a way, just kind of return clients and people that want to keep working with me. Pretty much continuous since the early 2000s, different spots. We've been in this location about 2.5 years now. So we have a core label operation where we're signing artists, developing them, and then we distribute approximately 60 other indie labels. So Brain Feeder, Delicious Vinyl, Friends of Friends, Rodriguez Lopez Productions, a lot of really cool, relevant indie music. We just wrapped up new Thundercat EP, so it's a big one for us. And this week I've been working on Kamasi, Washington. There was a live recording that happened last week, and we have an NPR thing coming up, so I've been working on that quite a bit. A lot of the rap music I've been doing has been jazz tinged since the beginning. One of my first big groups I worked with was a group called Freestyle Fellowship, and their whole aesthetic is very jazz oriented, and that really, I've always kind of had that as a part of my palette. Working with Kamasi, Washington is definitely another level for me with the amount of instruments and everything, but I love the challenge, you know, and I'm very happy with it, how it's gone, so. And also too, I have a club, I have a weekly club, Low End Theory, where I like basically hand-built the sound system and we work down there on live sound quite a bit. So I get to take that to, you know, skill set as well, live stuff, and apply that to. Centerpiece of my studio, as you can see, is the XL-Desk. I have it fully racked, at this point, so many nice options. This is just, for me, having been in the box for the better part of 15 years, it's been such a joy. I mean, the last 2 years of mixing for me really kind of turned into a drag. I mean, I always had really nice outboard, but if you don't have a console, you're just doing it 2-bus. A lot of limitations to that. I mean, for my mastering stuff, that was fine, but for mixing, it was just got old, you know. And ultimately, I was working so much slower, you know, mousing it around the whole time. it's just, it really, I mean, it's hard to feel like you're not driving anything, you know, at that point. And I think when you're on a console, there's a feel you get by having all the controls right there, having the tactile surfaces, being able to adjust multiple things at once. I think that's the biggest drawback to the mouse approach. I used to have a big controller too, the 24 channel Digidesign one, but that was nothing like this, you know. I was always a 500 series person. So this just, I mean, if you're a 500 guy, this is awesome. I'd never seen a layout like this. With it, I mean, of course, there's the API consoles, but the way you guys have it and just the angling of it, it's a dream come true. Also, the busing capabilities is what really attracted me to this over, say, like the Matrix. And I try to do my version of like the Browerized technique, and in a way, I mean, this console is almost practically built for it. You know, how you can steal the modules over and have kind of mix into the compression. That's just so different, you know, than trying to do that with a bunch of plugins. You know, also parallel. I mean, I've been paralleling more than ever, and it's so awesome. I get such a great effect from it, especially on vocals. Again, you know, let me know how that goes in the box. You know, ain't gonna go down right. How quickly I can mix has been vastly improved. Previously, I want to say in the box mix, you know, I'd be spending 4 to 5 hours, you know, to try to finish a mix, one song. It usually would take me 2 to 3 hours just to get the mix to sit where I feel like, all right, the tone is right. Now I'm just kind of focusing on little pan stuff, or, you know, just more kind of small things. And that's a long time. And that's 2 hours, 3 hours, a long time to grind till you feel like, all right, this sounds decent. With this console now, I can do the same thing in like literally 15, 20 minutes. I get to sit and then focus on the smaller details. For sure. I mean, I'm getting the best feedback I've ever gotten from people. And it was as soon, I mean, of course, I was very happy to get it, and all my regular guys all knew as soon as it was installed. And we've been able to mix, I want to say, maybe close to 10 albums now on it since December. So we've been putting it through its paces. I mean, I kind of amazed someone here recently where they were used to stem printing just being a real long process. And they didn't realize that we were doing it as we were printing the mixes. So afterwards, we're like, all right, so you guys ready to do the stems? Like, ready to do the stems? Already, we got them. You know, so it's, these days today too, I think the way music is utilized, especially if you're licensing to video games, they're not going to take a straight track. They need it stemmed. It's like a requirement. So it's very handy for those opportunities. And if you've actually been lucky enough to rock on a real, you know, SSL console, I don't know how people even consider going back. I don't even know how that's even considered, especially on the workflow, the sound. I mean, I don't even want to understand it, you know. And I've come in again. I started on, you know, analog consoles, went in the box for over a decade, and came out of it, and it's just, you know, changed my life, man. You know, like I was bumming on mixes before having to mix stuff. It kind of was a chore. It's a joy now. I think the business of engineering is ultimately about being a really good listener, being able to articulate frequency, ear training to a certain degree, knowing what 2K is without someone having to say it, or you have to look for it, or 3K or 5K, or, you know, having a good EQ vocabulary, knowing Q, knowing slopes, knowing how that all fits together. I think today is one of the most exciting periods of music. I feel that because of technology, there's more music being made today than ever before. It's exciting, you know, the idea that, you know, some of the greatest artists who are ever going to really use this kind of stuff are maybe just being born right now, you know, or maybe just making their first beat today, and that we're really just scratching the surface of what can be done with music technology today.